Municipal. We have roll call.
Dan Pillow.
Here.
Lisa Stafford.
Here.
Dan Dalton.
Here.
Ann Pillow.
Here.
Steve Dalton.
Here.
Pam Jackson.
Here. All right, we're here for a special council meeting for the hearing of Kevin Kelsey.
Okay. Could you, my name's Robert Kelly, I'm a solicitor for the Village of Addyston. Could you swear in Mr. Kelsey and Chief McWhorter?
Would you raise your right hands, please? Do you solemnly swear testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Sir?
First
Thank you.
witness the village would like to call is Kevin Kelsey. You can sit in that chair if you'd like, Mr. Kelsey, or
Okay.
if you want him at the microphone.
The microphone would probably be easier. for everybody to
Microphone.
hear it.
Is this fine?
Yes. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Kevin Patrick Kelsey.
Okay, do you have a business address for your employment?
I would be here 235
235,
Main Street.
okay, Addison,
Addison,
Ohio.
Ohio.
How long have you been a police officer?
Total or for the Village of Addison?
Total,
Since August of 1998.
August of 1998, has that been continuous?
Yes, sir.
And your service as a police officer have been with what departments?
Hamilton County Sheriff's Patrol.
Did you actually serve as a road officer?
No, I did not. I was with the Special Deputies Division there.
Okay, and what's a special deputy as opposed to a road patrol officer?
They're not part of the patrol division. They work more the special details that are assigned by the sheriff supervisors, such as the church details or security details, traffic details and whatnot.
Okay, were you lead certified at any time when you were a Hamilton County special deputy?
I don't believe I was.
Okay, what was the next department you worked
The
for?
city of Cheviot as a patrol officer.
Was that actually road patrol?
Yes, sir.
Were you lead certified when you worked for the city of Cheviot Police Department?
Yes, I was.
And when did you work for the city of Cheviot?
I believe it was between the years 2000 and 2002.
Okay, did you voluntarily leave that department?
I did.
What was the next department you worked for?
The next department was the Ross Township Police Department in Butler County, Ohio.
And what did you do for that?
Patrol Division.
Were you actually a road patrol officer?
Yes, sir.
You were lead certified?
Yes, sir.
Did you voluntarily leave that department?
I did.
Okay, and when did you leave there?
I left that department in the summer of 2013.
And you started with them when?
I believe it was December 2003.
2003?
Yes, sir.
And the next department you worked for?
The Village of Cleves Police Department.
And what did you do for them?
That was a part-time patrol division position.
When did you start with them?
I started them the same month I left the Ross Township Department. The summer months, I can't remember exactly.
When did you quit?
I ended up leaving, I was there about 5 months, so I'm gonna say approximately November, later that year.
Okay. And what was the next police department you served with?
The next police department was, I had a short break in service. I picked it back up in 2017 with the Village of 7 Mile Police Department in Butler County.
Okay, and how long were you with them?
I was with them roughly, I believe it was March till June or July of that year.
And what were your duties with 7 Mile?
That was strictly an auxiliary police officer position. My main responsibility was, should they need an extra patrolman for a shift, they would call me, or if they needed someone for the mayor's court, I would end up doing that.
Were you lead certified?
No, they never actually called me for any of that.
Okay. After 7 Mile, what was the next department?
Village of Addison.
And when did you get employed by the Village of Addyston?
I think it was approximately June or July that year.
2017?
Yes, sir.
Have you had any interruptions in your service with the Village of Addyston?
Not until January 13th of 2020.
Okay? And what I'd like to do, Officer Kelsey, I'm gonna hand you a binder here. Why was your service interrupted with the Village of Addyston on January 13th, 2020?
It was interrupted because I was charged with aggravated menacing by the Butler County Sheriff's Office. And as a result of that criminal charge, I was then, upon my notifying Chief Dory LaCourse, he advised me to not come into work. And then shortly after that, I offered him my uniforms, my duty weapon, and my badge and credentials. At the same time, I was employed with the Village of Glendale, and they at that time asked me for those items. So with having nothing to hide, trying to cooperate with my employers, I just made contact with Chief LaCourse and volunteered the same information and village property to him as well. He in turn left me a voicemail saying not to come into work.
Okay. Now, were there any orders issued by the court in Butler County prohibiting you from carrying a firearm?
Well, upon the date of my suspension, my actual suspension notice that I signed with the Village of Addyston, or I'm sorry, not Addyston, my correction, with the Village of Glendale, what have you, was January the 15th. I signed a document saying that my police powers were suspended throughout the duration of the ongoing investigation of the charges that were filed against me.
Are you employed by Glendale now?
No, Glendale elected to terminate my employment there on, I believe it was April the 4th of 2020.
Okay. Now I want you to take a look at Exhibit 2, if you would. And that white binder in front of you.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize that document?
I'm sure I've seen it before.
What is it?
It says it's a receipt for policy and/or revisions for the Addyston Police Department.
Okay, and you signed acknowledging that you received those?
I did.
Okay, and that is your signature on Exhibit 2?
That it is.
Okay, and you received those on 7/8 of 17, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I want you to go to Exhibit 3, if you would.
Okay.
And do you see Exhibit 3, and can you identify that?
I can. It says it's the part of the Addyston Police Department Policy and Procedure Manual. Its subject mentioned is the right to privacy, computer criminal history, information release.
Okay, and do you see at the bottom of Exhibit 3 where it says all RCIC leads and NCIC protocols shall be followed in regards to these records as
Yes.
well?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, and do you have the ability to access RCIC?
Currently, right now, I do not. I am on a leads deny.
Do you have the ability to access leads?
I do not.
Do you have the ability to access NCIC?
I do not.
These are all requirements of the position of an Addyston police officer, correct?
They are a requirement.
Okay? You're unable to fulfill those,
I cannot at this time, no.
okay? And what is RCIC?
RCIC is a criminal database that pertains strictly to Hamilton County.
What is LEADS?
That pertains to the state of Ohio,
And NCIC?
and that's national.
Okay? When you worked for the village of Addyston, which one of the foregoing items, RCIC, LEADS, or NCIC, did you use?
Actually, all of them come into play as part of daily operations, being a patrol officer.
Okay? And why did you use those?
Anytime I would have to use those would be if I had to run a license plate or run a social security number, date of birth on a pertaining to any police report or incident, where there may be a suspect or witnesses or what have you to an incident.
So is it fair to say you acknowledge that an Addyston police officer is required to be able to use RCIC, LEADS, and NCIC by the policies and procedures of the Village of Addyston Police Department?
Yes, sir, it is.
I want you to take a look at Exhibit 4. Can you identify that?
I can. It's also in reference to the Addiston Police Department Policy and Procedure Manual, subject being incarcerations procedure.
Okay?
Bob, I'm just gonna jack the report through, I'm not sure what the relevance is to this, but obviously, if you're gonna ask, you're gonna ask. I don't know what the relevance to the interrogation, field interrogation, the manual case jacket, investigative arrests, AWOLs, warrants, missing persons, how to take a officer down, or how to take a suspect down to the Justice Center, any of that. I mean, we're here on the leads deny, I believe.
It is on the leads denying his ability to discharge his duties under the policies and procedures of the Village of Addyston. And the issue is, how does his inability to access leads impact his ability to discharge his duties as an Addyston police officer, or whether he could even perform those duties?
As it relates to all the rest of them that you're going to be going through, 4 through 11 and 12.
Each one of those procedures,
All right, I appreciate it.
okay? Now, you recognize Exhibit 4,
I'm sure I've seen it before.
okay? And this is one of the policies and procedures that you've reviewed in compliance with your signature on Exhibit 2, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay? Now, it states in Exhibit 4 what paperwork is needed for the commitment of a prisoner to the Hamilton County Jail, correct?
It does.
Now, if you look at Section 2 of Exhibit 4, it states that you or an officer of the village is required to complete a 527 form. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What items do you need to access from LEADS, NCIC, or RCIC to complete a 527 form?
Now you're gonna need a ton of information, really. You're gonna need your social security number, date of birth, physical description, name, address, last known address, aliases, scars, marks, deformities, tattoos, things of that nature. Clothing description, charges that pertain to that particular transport or incident. Next to kin type information, demographic stuff.
And if you were on LEADS denied, you wouldn't be able to access LEADS, RCIC, or NCIC to complete the 527 form. Is that correct?
No, I could not.
Okay? I want you to take a look at Exhibit 4 again. What's a signal 30 in section I-1, the third dot down? What's a signal 30?
I know the answer to your question, but what am I looking at on this page, sir?
You're looking at page 1 of Exhibit 4.
Okay?
See where it says Criminal Justice Center? And then it says arrests
Oh, yes.
accepted.
I got you.
Signals 30.
Yeah, signal 30 would be a subject that has an active warrant.
Are you able to determine if the individual has an active warrant if you're not able to access RCIC, NCIC, or leads?
No, you'd have to confirm it through the terminal.
Okay? And if you go down to the next one, a warrant on an indictment, could you confirm that without access to RCIC, NCIC, or leads?
No?
Where it says fugitives, could you determine whether an individual is a fugitive without access to NCIC, RCIC, or leads?
No, sir.
Okay, if you go down one further where it says warrant for juvenile court contempt, could you access those records if you're not able to access RCIC, NCIC, or leads?
No.
And if you go down further, the next one, warrant for domestic relations court, could you access that if you didn't have access to RCIC, NCIC, or leads?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, and you go down one further where it says AWOLs, are you able to access information concerning whether an individual who you stop is AWOL without access to RCIC, NCIC, or leads?
Nope.
Are you able to access Common Pleas Probation Department warrants without access to RCIC, NCIC, or leads?
Mm-mm. No.
Are you able to access commitments from Mayor's Court within Hamilton County with access to RCIC, NCIC, or leads? Please?
No.
And where you see further the paperwork needed if someone is transported to, for incarceration, where it says traffic citation and physical arrest for a traffic offense, what type of an offense would that be?
Pertaining to what, a traffic citation?
Yes, that would be an incarceration offense.
It would be anything, well, a felony, for one.
Okay, and would it be an OBI?
Yes.
Okay, and would you have the ability to determine whether an individual had a prior OBI without access to RCIC, NCIC, or leads?
No.
I want you to go to Exhibit 5.
Okay.
You recognize Exhibit 5?
I have probably seen it before, yes.
Okay, this is one of the policies or procedures that you were provided on or about July 18th, 2017, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and in that policy and procedure is a Addyston police officer, you're required to run an RCIC, NCIC check on individuals who you stop for traffic offenses, is that correct?
It is.
And on leads denied, you could not do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and if you go further in number 2, it says that if the subject has a criminal history, you're required to obtain a control number. Where do you get that?
Your control number you get off of RCIC.
Okay, and on leads denied, you couldn't do that, correct?
Correct.
And if you go down further in Exhibit 5, under number 4, it states if the officer deems the subject as someone of special interest, this FIR, what does that FIR mean?
It's a FAR card, like a field interrogation or field interview report.
Okay? Is that a report that you would prepare?
Yes.
Okay? And what information would go on that?
That would be name, date of birth, social, any information I can obtain from them, physical description, clothing they're wearing, race, height, approximate weight,
Do you confirm that information?
You can eventually, yeah.
How do you confirm it?
You would run them through your terminal.
What terminal?
The RCIC leads NCIC.
Okay, and at the present time, you're not able to do that, correct?
Correct.
If we go further, it says can be entered into OLEG. What's OLEG?
OLEG is Ohio, oh my God. It's a reporting system and it's an information system used by law enforcement in the state of Ohio.
Is that through leads also?
I don't believe it is.
Okay. Do you have to have access to the computer to access OLEG?
You do.
Okay. Let's go to,
You can, if you don't mind me adding, you can access OLEG as long as you're authorized to have access through any computer. Then there have to be a terminal that provides you access through RCIC leads.
okay, let's go to Exhibit 6, showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 6. Can you identify that document?
Yes, sir, it's part of the Addyston Police Department Policy and Procedure Manual in reference to a case jacket.
Okay, this was another document that you were provided back in July of 2017, correct?
Correct.
And if we look at that item, it says, place all pertinent reports, NIBRS, the National Incident Based Reporting System. Where do you get that information?
To fill out all of this,
Well, I want to know how you access NIBRS.
that's a reporting system that would be done through the terminal back here at the station.
Is that through leads?
You know what, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, well, it also says you have to complete a Form 527, correct?
Correct.
And you've acknowledged that you couldn't complete that without access to a leads terminal, correct?
Correct.
And if you go down further, it says all NIBRS reports will be entered into OLEG under number 3. Have you ever done that?
Enter the NIRS report into OLEG.
Yes.
I believe I have, yeah.
Okay, and on number 4, all the reports that are required by or are to be inserted in the case jacket pursuant to Exhibit 6, policy number 2701, you acknowledge that you couldn't perform those functions, correct?
Correct.
And let's go to Exhibit 7. Do you see Exhibit 7 there?
I do.
Can you identify that?
Yes, sir. It's
What is it?
in subject, it's in reference to investigative arrests.
Okay? And this is another policy or procedure that you couldn't comply with because of your leads deny. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so where it calls for the Form 527, you've already acknowledged that you can't complete that, correct?
Correct.
And now I want you to go to second page of that exhibit. Exhibit 7. And specifically, I want you to go to Exhibit 7, number 7A on the second page.
Yep.
There are down at 7A, it says when subjects are arrested on misdemeanor warrants for other Ohio jurisdictions. How do you obtain those misdemeanor warrants, the information for them, when you're serving as an Addyston officer?
Sometimes it may be through the terminal or through a computer, or sometimes I may have to call that particular agency if it's in.
How would you know to call a particular agency if you didn't have access to the computer?
Well, if I was calling a plate and or calling a social security number, date of birth, or identify somebody through the radio dispatch, and they were to relate that they had, from their end, a warrant.
You know, under leads denied, you're not permitted to access any information
I do,
on the leads terminal.
I do.
So if you stopped someone and even gave them the plate number, you couldn't even radio anyone to obtain that information, correct?
Okay,
Is that correct?
it sounds correct to me.
And if you were truthful with them and told them that you were on leads denied, when you were out there and stopped someone, you couldn't verify any of the information provided by the person that you stopped, correct?
Correct.
You couldn't fill out an arrest form for the individual, a 527, correct?
Couldn't confirm anything they were telling me to be accurate.
Okay. Now, I want you to go to Exhibit 8. See Exhibit 8?
I do.
Can you identify that?
Yeah, it's in reference to AWOLs.
Okay. And if you are on duty as an officer to determine if someone's AWOL, what do you do?
You're gonna need your terminal.
You don't have access to it, correct?
That is correct.
You don't have the ability to complete the 527 form that's required in number 1, correct?
Correct.
You don't have the ability to insert a copy of the computer printout indicating that the arrested is wanted to provide to the jailer either, correct?
Correct.
And you don't have a 527 form to provide to the jailer to sign indicating that the arrested was released to the Justice Center for custody, correct?
That's correct.
So you can't perform that duty as a police officer.
That's accurate.
Let's go to Exhibit 9. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
What is that?
It's a section of the police department policy pertaining to warrant and KPS service.
This is one of the documents that you received back on 7/18 of 2017, correct?
Yes.
And if we go through Exhibit 9, it says whenever an officer makes contact with an individual who is wanted on a warrant/capias, you can't make that determination without access to RCIC, NCIC, or leads, correct?
Correct.
And if you go further down, it states under letter I, wanted by another agency. Since you don't have the ability to determine if the person's wanted, the people that you stop, you can't even make a determination if they're wanted, not wanted, if there's a capias or a warrant for them, correct?
Correct.
And that's one of your responsibilities as an Addyston police officer, correct?
That is correct.
You can't fulfill that function.
Nope.
Now, if you go down further in item 3, AII, we're talking about that complete a signal 3527.
Hey, Bob, I think we've already asked him multiple times about filling out a 527. He's answered it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, if he can't do it on one of these other policies, he can't do it on this policy.
that's fine,
I think they've been asked and answered.
that's
As
fine,
it relates to all of these.
okay? Do you even have the ability to determine if someone is wanted by the village of Addyston without access to leads, RCIC or NCIC?
Currently, no.
Okay? Go to page 2 of Exhibit 9, where it states that the arresting officer shall be responsible for canceling the warrant, capias, and should be RCIC leads. You can't access the computer to even do that, correct?
That is correct.
Go to Exhibit 10. See Exhibit 10?
Yes, sir.
Can you identify that?
It's in reference to missing persons.
Okay? And if you go to 1B, it states, that an official report will be filed immediately upon receiving the report. How do you file that report?
I'll have to access the reporting system.
What's the reporting system?
Back here, I don't know what we're using. Critical missing.
Is it through leads?
Yeah, if you don't mind, ask me that question one more time. My head's kind of all over right now.
Can you read that back to him?
Before the, is it through leads?
Yes.
Question, okay, and if you go to 1B, it states that an official report will be filed immediately upon receiving the report. How do you file that report?
I'm gonna have to access our computer reporting database, whether it's on my terminal in the car or back here. I thought we were using PAMET or OLE.
Okay, now, as far as accessing your computer, you can't access the computer in the car because that's connected to leads, correct?
Correct.
You can't access the computer at the station because that's connected to leads, correct?
It may be.
You can't read a computer printout that's generated by RCIC or NCIC on leads denied, correct?
Correct.
And you agree that it's critical for any officer serving the village of Addyston that they have access to RCIC, NCIC to perform their duties, correct?
I think it's important.
What's required by the policies and procedures, correct?
It is.
Now, if you go down to Exhibit 10, number 2A, let's go to 2B.
Okay.
It states a teletype will be issued on all official missing persons. How do you get that issued, the teletype?
That would come over a terminal.
Out of what terminal? The leads terminal?
Yeah, it would be in the RCIC office and the leads office.
Okay? And if you go down to 2D, it further requires you to be able to access the terminal, to enter in the information for a missing person on leads NCIC, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you're on duty and you come across an individual, you can't even make a determination whether they're lost or not, correct? Or missing,
Correct.
because you can't access the computer.
That is accurate, yes.
So, under number 3 of Exhibit 10, you couldn't cancel the leads or NCIC missing person entry, even if for some reason you discovered that someone was missing, correct?
Correct.
Okay? Let's go to Exhibit 11. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
That's my certificate of completion for leads certification.
Okay? And let's go to Exhibit 12. Can you identify that?
That is a responsibility agreement in reference to the Addyston Police Department, RCIC leads, and NCI security. And it's an agreement that I signed in 7/18 of 2017.
Go to number 4. Do you see that where it says, I understand that Ohio law regulates access to the information in the law enforcement systems?
Yes,
And you understand at the present time that you are on leads denied, correct?
yes,
And if you go further, you understand that the village of Addyston cannot permit you to access leads denied, correct?
while on leads denied, correct.
Okay? you go to the second last page of Exhibit 12,
Okay,
you see where it says Ohio Law Enforcement Gateway Agency User Agreement?
yes, sir, I see
You signed that also, correct?
it. I did.
And it states there that access to OLEG is a privilege subject to termination, correct?
Yes,
How do you access OLEG?
through the computer here on the station.
The Leeds computer?
You could access OLEG through any computer, sir, just looking up the OLEG website, as long as you're privileged and have access with a password and username.
Okay,
I could do it from my house if I like.
okay. I want you to go to Exhibit 13. What is Exhibit 13?
Sign off, let's see. Dated July 18th, 2017. Excuse me. Sign off on the following after you read them. It's my signature signed after the RCIC security policy, lead security policy, and NCIC security policy, indicating that I have read it.
Okay,
Also OLEG security policy and OLEG security video.
go to Exhibit 14.
Okay.
Do you see that document?
I do.
Have you seen that document prior to today?
I have seen this, yes, sir.
Okay. Did you report to anyone in the village of Addyston that you were on Leeds Deny back when you received Exhibit 14?
I actually just seen Exhibit 14 yesterday on looking through my personnel file that I requested from the village of Glendale.
So you're stating that you didn't receive this letter from Leeds back sometime around January 23rd, 2020?
If I did, it may have been emailed to the department, however, being suspended on January 15th of 2020, I no longer had access to the building or any of the computers at the village of Glendale. So I wouldn't have seen it with my police department email being property of the village of Glendale. I no longer had access to that.
Look at Exhibit 15. You see that?
Yes, sir, I do.
And that's the official notice that you're on Leeds Deny, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay? Now, Officer Kelsey, you'll agree with me that you can't perform the duties that are expected of an Addyston police officer by the Addyston Police Procedure Manual when you're on Leeds Deny, correct?
Not while on Leeds Deny, correct.
I'm done with it. You know, we're,
You can stay up there for a minute.
Stay here.
Yeah, a couple questions. First off, Officer Kelsey, appreciate you going through all those different policies and procedures.
Sure.
And from your testimony, it's obvious that you were unable to perform those because of the leaves denied that was received back in January. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When you were working for Addyston, how did you find out about you being in leaves denied?
The first I heard of being on Leeds Deny was following Lieutenant McClure's internal investigation, thorough investigation that he put together in reference to those criminal charges in this whole investigation over 2020. He recommended my reinstatement without restriction to full duty as a police officer for the village of Addyston. I came in, I can't remember exactly what month that was, but I came in a short time after he decided that I did not violate any policies of the village or the police department, and that I was not convicted of any crime by the judicial system. He recommended to Mayor Mears that I was fully reinstated. That being said, he issued me some of the equipment needed to come back to duty, being duty weapon, a badge, and some other things, maybe a few uniform shirts and whatnot. And then later that day, when I got home, Lieutenant called me and notified me that there was a problem, that upon him trying to renew my access into leads, that I had a leads denied. So that's when I was notified.
I think for the council's edification and to be able to better understand this, what does it mean to be, I mean, how do you, a pen and paper and on a computer, what does that actually mean? Do they remove your access by your password? I mean, how does
Well,
that actually manifest itself?
Basically, well,
I'm just gonna object because I don't think he would understand, unless there's some foundation laid, how leads removes him from the computer, or I don't understand the pen and the
Well,
paper.
I guess what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to figure out how it first came to his, who came to you and said, Kevin, Officer Kelsey, you're no longer on leave?
I heard it first from Lieutenant McWhorter.
About when was that?
Oh, I'd have to look at, can I reference the,
Yeah, I'm gonna approach the witness, and I've got a couple of sets of copies for you.
I have to look at the date of the internal.
I didn't know how many would be
Sometime
here,
shortly
how many
after.
Zoom, there's two. All right, Kevin, first I'd like to reference to Exhibit A.
Okay,
You see that?
yes, sir,
Are you familiar with that?
I am.
Is that the internal investigation done by Interim Chief McWhorter that you were referencing?
Yes, it is.
And for purposes of the record, is that Exhibit A approximately 7 pages?
6, 7 exactly, yes, sir.
All right. And this is something that you reviewed?
Yes, I have several times.
And for the record, this is not dated, is that correct?
Doesn't appear to be. No.
So we don't know when this was completed, correct?
I can't recall, no.
It seems to be addressed to the mayor, is that right?
That it is.
And in your understanding, does it reference the situation that, from January 13, 2020?
Yes, sir.
Namely, the criminal menacing charge back in Butler County involving a Rebecca Lynn Gillespie?
Gillespie, yes, sir.
Gillespie with a P, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The investigation, you reviewed this, do you agree with this internal investigation?
I do.
Do you feel that Interim Chief McWhorter was thorough?
I feel he was very thorough.
Did Interim Chief McWhorter actually do more work in this than the Butler County Sheriff's Office?
I'm gonna object.
Yes.
I'm just gonna object because we'll stipulate Exhibit A, we'll stipulate every one of these records. He's not being terminated because of the Butler County offense. He's not being terminated because of the offense down in Tennessee. He's being terminated solely for being on leads denied.
Respectfully, Bob, cart before the horse, if this had not happened, that would not have happened.
Yeah.
So I would ask that I be able to ask him some questions about this.
Well, I don't
Especially
think,
considering it involves an investigation and an internal investigation done by the chief of Addiston's police department.
in other words,
Completely relevant to why we're here today.
it's not relevant to why we're here, because the only reason we're here.
Respectfully, it is, because if this had not happened, and had this been investigated, and had properly been investigated, and charges not gone through like they shouldn't have, he would not have lost his leads in the first place, and we wouldn't be here having a council hearing on why he should be terminated.
Then, hold on a second. You know what? If you wanna sit there and shake your head back there, you can either sit there or you can leave the room. okay? Unless you're called as a witness, okay?
It's open to the public, Bob, so
Okay.
just do your job, buddy.
Don't worry about me.
I am worried about you.
The second thing is this, as far as who investigated the Butler County charge, that's not up to the Village of Addyston, because the Village of Addyston is not in Butler County. But the bottom line of this situation is one thing and one thing only, which is the leads deny. And that's really the only issue. We're not investigating what occurred down in Tennessee. We're not investigating or discharging him because of the Butler County.
Did you
offense.
investigate that your former chief sent in a false SF 401 officer separation to the Ohio Attorney General's office?
You know what? Then you could bring in the former chief, and you could bring him in to testify.
Well, wouldn't
You
the,
could bring in
wouldn't
the
counsel
Butler.
have been involved in that?
He's not the chief at the present time. You could bring in the Butler County officers, or if you really want to get into the Butler County offense, you could bring in the purported victim of the Butler County offense, all of which have nothing to do with this, which is totally on leads deny, and that's it.
Okay, well, the fact of the matter is, and I think I was gonna ask Officer Kelsey, because the
Yes,
lead
sir.
deny is very relevant to this, because that's why he's here, you're trying to save his job. What we've got here is that the chief, the interim chief, did an investigation. It looks as though it was actually under your direction, Mr. Kelly, to begin the internal investigation. Which would mean that it would probably benefit the village of Addyston to have it done. So that's why I think I'm asking, and if you look to the 4th page of the internal investigation, it does say that he was correcting former Chief LaCourse, at the direction of Solicitor Kelly in beginning the internal investigation.
I'm not disputing that, Dave. I'm not disputing that. And Chief McWhorter's investigation of that essentially resolved that issue in Mr. Kelsey's favor.
Correct, I would agree with that.
This is not the Village of Addyston taking him off the Leeds computer. This is the Leeds people who are denying him access, and it comes down to whether he can discharge his duties as an Addyston police officer.
Bob, I get it. I let you go through and ask him about 9 to 10 different policies and procedures that really
Go
are
ahead.
not relevant here
Go
today. I
ahead.
let you do it.
Go ahead, just go
I
ahead.
think there needs to be clarification about this internal investigation. I think that Officer Kelsey has the right to respond to it, all right?
It's not an issue. He's not being discharged
I
for that.
understand. So what I'm gonna ask him is, if you look to the 5th page of this, did Chief McWhorter try to contact Ms. Gillespie?
Yes, we did.
Did she respond?
It states that she, as soon as he identified himself, she hung up on him. He attempted a total of 5 times and got no return call.
All right, does that seem to be, echo the response that she gave to the Butler County investigators?
Yes.
If you go down to the middle of that page, case progress, what does that say in the first paragraph?
The victim's advocate was called by the alleged victim, and she was advised by the victim that she did not wish to pursue charges and that she was intoxicated at the time of the initial report and didn't recall what she had told responding officers. Her Butler County Sheriff's Office, Prosecutor's Office, and Counsel.
And that was deduced and identified during his internal investigation, correct?
Yes.
And wouldn't that information be relevant to a review of why you're denied leads?
Yes.
Objection. He wouldn't know that.
Okay, Officer Kelsey, I'm going to refer you back to Addiston's exhibit number.
Can council members ask a question?
This is how it
This is
usually works.
Councilmember Stafford, and I'd like to ask a question, please.
Go ahead.
Okay, so according to the letter that Hurricane McWhorter on December 3rd, it says they are still denying to reinstate him. How are we supposed to overturn their findings when they're the ones in charge of the leads.
Councilmember, you're busting in and out, I apologize. I guess, I think I got the gist of what you were asking. And we're getting to that. The whole point of the matter is that Leeds letter from December 3rd, which was Exhibit 15, I was going to get back to that and ask Officer Kelsey to elaborate on that, okay? Does that help? Is she still there?
Not really, because I feel like you're wasting our time when it's out of our hands.
Well-
Are we supposed to turn?
Councilmember.
That's not up to us. They decided it.
Councilmember, why don't you read the last paragraph? This denial may only be appealed by criminal justice agency administrator per section 5.12 of the lead security policy. Submitting an appeal does not guarantee access will be reinstated by the Ohio CJIS systems officer. However, there is a process where it can be appealed. And I will ask Officer Kelsey this question now, if I may. Officer Kelsey, what do you understand they're looking for when they appeal that?
Objection. You need
Does
somebody
Leeds-
from Leeds for that.
Does Leeds completely foreclose you from RCIC access?
Yes.
It does. Were you ever given a notice that you were denied access to RCIC?
No.
Were you ever given a notice that you were denied access to NCIC?
No.
Could you get the information to complete reports under these policies that you testified to from either RCIC or NCIC?
I'm not certain.
Does NCIC and RCIC contain similar information as Leeds?
They do.
Does it provide information about social security numbers,
Yes.
identifying scars,
Yes.
phone numbers,
Yes.
dates of birth,
Yes.
next of kin,
Yes.
prior arrests,
Yes.
warrants?
Yes.
Basically all the information that Leeds provides.
Yes.
And to your knowledge, Addyston did not receive anything from RCIC denying you access to RCIC, did they?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And to your knowledge, you were not notified that you were denied access to NCIC, is that right?
Correct.
So using one of those alternate databases, you would be able to complete those same reports, is that right?
Possibly, yes.
Now, I assume after you found out from the department that you were on Leeds denied, that you did some sort of an investigation of what you need to do to get that back, is that right?
I did.
And what did you find out?
Well, when I first found out, myself and, am I to address you, Lieutenant or General Chief? Lieutenant McCorder, started investigating things ourselves, which he was then directed to start his internal, and communicating with Lieutenant almost daily, and kind of comparing our notes as to how far we were getting with this. He seemed to be hitting somewhat of a roadblock or a stumbling block with one of the supervisors at Leeds, and just stated that I could try contacting them upon myself if I wanted to. So I went ahead and figured it's my hide on the line, why not, what do I have to lose? I made a phone call to Leeds, and I talked to two people. I talked to somebody in the security division and somebody in the Leeds administration. And one of them told me that they were really not permitted to speak with me about a lot of it, because it had to be, if it was gonna be appealed, it had to be appealed by my chief officer or police administrator, because they are not permitted to speak to the public. And although I am the subject, I am looked at as the public, because I'm not a chief or the law enforcement administrator. The other individual educated me that the only way to appeal that had to be a written appeal from the chief or the law enforcement administrator. And that, from the way it was explained to me, would then put the ball back in the court of Leeds, allowing them to look into my situation further And however, it wasn't a guarantee they would allow me access again. They stated that that had to be the next hoop to be jumped through. So they explained it to me that it really, my argument at that point in time was not with Leeds. It was that the village was not doing their due diligence in filing the appeal, allowing the Leeds Security Board up there to conduct a more, I guess, thorough view at the details of my situation.
Okay, Officer Kelly, did you notify the village that there was a process for them to appeal your Leeds denial?
Yeah, I believe I spoke with Lieutenant Recorder.
Did you request that that be done?
I asked them to, yes.
And what was the response?
We've had so many conversations about it. It was one that they could not,
Was it that they could not or they would not?
well, they would not.
Okay, and why would they not?
His comment to me, Lieutenant Recorder's statement to me was that he wanted to do it, the mayor wanted to do it, Bob Kelly, Solicitor Kelly, sorry, did not approve or authorize that appeal.
Okay, was that before or after he came up with the conclusion that in my investigation research, Officer Kelly has violated no part of the Addyston police policy and procedure due to the fact that he was only accused of a crime, not convicted of one?
It's Officer Kelsey.
Appreciate it. Freudian slip, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah.
Was it also after he said, had Officer Kelly been convicted of an alleged offense, Kelsey, he would have been in violation of Addyston Policy Procedure Number 1.02 Code of Ethics? Is that right?
Was it before or after?
Yes, when you asked him to appeal it. And was it also after his recommendation is full reinstatement of Officer Kelsey immediately due to the fact that he has not violated any policy or procedure, was not given due process by former Chief LaCourse?
I believe it was after.
Okay, so the Village of Addyston, through its chief executive officer in the police department, found that you did nothing wrong.
Correct.
They found that you did not violate any policies or procedures.
Yes, sir.
They found that you did not violate policies and procedures in exhibits 2 through 12, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to draw your attention to what has been marked as Exhibit E. Do you have that?
The Leeds letter to Addyston.
Yes, have you seen this before?
I believe. No, I don't believe I have.
Well, this is in fact the same document that the councilwoman, I didn't get her name, was referencing previous that you looked at, correct?
Okay, yeah.
And in the second paragraph, there is a provision stating that this denial may be appealed by a criminal justice agency administrator.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And that administrator would be Interim Chief McWhirter, is that right?
Yes.
I'd also like to draw your attention to Exhibit C. You see Exhibit C?
Clark County.
Are you familiar, have you reviewed those documents?
You're asking me, yes.
Yes, Officer Kelsey.
Yes, sir.
Officer Kelsey, how did you receive these documents?
Let me find them first of all. I'm sorry. I got stuff mixed up here. Right at the top, right in front of me. Okay, I received these from the detective at the Clark County Sheriff's Office.
And what does Clark County have to do with why we're here today?
Well, Clark County, that's where Rebecca Lynn Gillespie lived when I met her and we started our relationship, which was late 2018, October, November, something like that.
And for the record, this Exhibit C is 5 pages, correct?
Yes,
And it contains 2 separate, are these narrative reports? What would you call these?
these are CAD reports, which is basically from the communication center, information between the 911, or the caller, being myself, the dispatcher, and then updated information as they communicate with their responding deputies.
And the first one, pages 2 and 3, can you identify, what do those have to do?
2 and 3,
I believe they're the same incident, page 2, the second page of that exhibit is dated 7/12/2019, is that right?
yes.
Top right-hand corner, what is this? What is this CAD about?
That's actually a CAD report from Butler County Sheriff's Office, Butler County Communications Center,
All right,
on July 12th, 2019. You want me to go into that?
and for the record, that would be approximately 6 months before January 13th, 2020, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you go to the first full paragraph where it says 7/12/2019, spoke with caller, can you state what it says in there?
Yeah, spoke with caller, myself being the caller. Said he advised they are girlfriend and boyfriend and do not reside together. Kevin advised she had been drinking. He stated when he got to her place, they got into an argument. He stated she grabbed him around the back of the head, fish hooked his mouth, and a small red mark was observed on the right corner of his mouth. Both parties stated they would separate for the time being until they cooled down. Neither party wished to pursue charges.
In this part, it's obvious that Rebecca was the aggressor, is that right?
It is.
Was she a physical woman?
Yes.
All right, next page, page 3, what's this? Clark County Sheriff's Department detail column.
Page 3 is a CAD report from Clark County. That was dated 12/22/2018. Similar incident where I called the sheriff's office, Clark County, while I was working down here in Hamilton County. I was on a call with Rebecca, and she appeared to have some slurred speech and something going on, maybe some intoxication or something of that nature. Stated, I'll read this. Caller's girlfriend was FaceTiming him, and she set the phone down and said someone's at the door. He heard her yelling for help. She's a fitness model, gets weird stalkers per the caller. He's known her for 2 months. He lives in Hamilton County. Her name's Rebecca Coleman / Gillespie. It's the same person. She's 38 years old, lives alone. He hasn't been able to get a hold of her since then. He's on the phone with her now. I can hear her crying in the background, and she said someone came in there. Threw her against the wall. Caller is advised the female is crying, says he's still there. He's not sure if she's code 82.
Let me stop you there. What
Yes,
is
sir.
code 82?
82, I believe, is intoxicated or a psychiatric emergency.
Okay, and then if you go down to the last full paragraph, it states he thinks she may be code 24. Who's he and what is code 24?
82 and 24, one of them is intoxicated and one of them is psychiatric emergency. I can't recall which.
And the date of this was from December 22nd, 2018, is that right?
Correct.
And what was the conclusion to this?
The conclusion of that, I had the deputy and officer on charge, or I'm sorry, OIC, the ranking officer on scene, contacted me with a disposition following that incident. He stated that there was no sign of forced entry. He sent the deputy around the house where she stated the attacker left through the rear door. There was no footprints, the snow was fresh fallen, nothing was disturbed, and she appeared to be, in his words, inebriated.
Do you find that those two separate calls and CAD reports are relevant to the frame of mind of Ms. Gillespie?
I think it kind of sets a pattern that she had a drinking issue, and that always seemed to be the case. I was the caller in both of those incidents.
Do you find that this information might be relevant to go to leads by a criminal justice agency administrator to determine whether or not you could be reinstated based on a false report filed by Ms. Gillespie?
I think it is yet another pertinent piece of the puzzle, yes.
You were charged with aggravated menacing as you testified to previously, correct?
I was charged, yes.
What was the disposition to that?
It was dismissed without prejudice.
All right, so you were dismissed completely and it has not been refiled as we sit here today, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did Ms. Gillespie come to court?
No, she did not.
Okay, did she have any reason why was there any a disability that would pardon her from not going to court to testify against you?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, is that in fact been expunged as we sit here today?
Yes, it has.
The arrest and the the entire matter, the case itself, correct?
Yes, it was expunged recently.
And did that information become, did the Village of Addyston know that you were dismissed in that case?
Yes,
All right. And you feel that that information would be relevant to Leeds determining whether or not your Leeds access could be reinstated?
yes, sir.
I'm going to direct your attention to Exhibit G. Just let me know when you've been out there.
Okay. I got it.
Can you identify that?
Yeah, it's the statement I gave.
That's actually a voluntary statement that you gave to the Addyston Police Department, is that right?
Yes, sir.
What was the, can you explain to the council what the background of why you had to give a voluntary statement to the Village of Addyston?
Well, I had to give a statement because during this whole thing, investigating officers and responding officers of the Butler County Sheriff's Office took her statement, but no one attempted to contact me. Nobody heard my side of the story as to the incident and the details. And Lieutenant McWhorter called me in to give a voluntary statement, just to kind of help on his end of things in determining what took place.
And in that Exhibit E that was received by Interim Chief McWhorter, doesn't it state that the reason why you were on Leeds denial in the first place was due to disqualifying prior criminal convictions and or arrests?
Yes.
Exhibit E, do you see that?
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Lines 2 and 3 of Exhibit E.
Yes, it does.
Have you been convicted of any criminal offense?
I have no criminal convictions ever.
Okay, and you've addressed the arrest, correct?
Yes,
Was there also another arrest that came to your attention as possibly being the reason why you are denied Leeds access?
yeah, there was an arrest.
And was that in Nashville, Tennessee?
It was in Nashville.
And what was the charge in that case?
That charge for Nashville Metro Police was domestic assault.
And that occurred in Nashville, allegedly in a bar, is that right?
Yes,
And the allegation against you was that you pushed your girlfriend at the time, Teresa Leash, to the floor, is that right?
yes, it was.
And that was investigated, correct?
Yes, it was.
And in fact, Ms. Leach went out of her way to execute an affidavit in that case, is that right?
Yes,
And if you would refer to Exhibit H, do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And this is, for the record, is the affidavit of Teresa Leach from May 31st, 2013, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And in that, it states that on or about the evening of March, she doesn't have a date, 2013, I visited Nashville with my boyfriend Kevin Kelsey. We visited several bars in downtown Nashville. I became overly intoxicated and insisted upon driving. Is that correct?
Yes,
Does that adequately reflect your understanding and recollection from that date?
yes, it does.
Mr. Kelsey asked me for my keys to prevent me from driving. I became irate and struck him. I was the primary aggressor. Is that also correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kelsey did not assault me, merely attempted to take my keys away and defend himself from me. Is that correct?
Yes,
And does that adequately reflect your recollection of that date in time?
yes, it does.
And did she in fact ask that she did not want to press charges against you and she did not want to prosecute against you?
Correct.
She requested it be dismissed entirely, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that case was indeed dismissed in its entirety.
Yes, it was.
And that case has subsequently been expunged, is that also right?
Yes, sir.
Outside of Butler County and outside of Nashville, do you have any other arrests that could be considered a disqualifying prior criminal conviction and/or arrest in your understanding of access to leads?
No, I do not.
Do you feel that you should be removed from leads denial?
I do.
Do you feel that if Addyston would appeal it, you would be removed from leads denial based on the facts contained in the exhibits you have testified to tonight?
I feel that I would.
And reference again, you have asked for someone to do that, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And the response is a flat denial.
Yes.
And was there any reason why? Did they tell you, as part of the reason, that they had other people with leads violations that would make it difficult for them to do that?
It was mentioned that there has been some previous leads violations.
Are those officers still working at Addyston?
I'm not aware.
Is at least one of them working at Addyston?
One of them is not, because I believe that was the former chief, Maureen LaCourse. It was unmentioned to me who the other two incidents were or who they involved. One may have, actually, I take that back, one had to do with the sergeant, leads issue with something to do with whatever he had done. And I believe he's still currently working there.
But that's your knowledge that Addyston cooperated in making sure that he had leads access, is that right?
Yes?
I'd like to direct your attention to Exhibit I.
Yes, sir?
Have you seen that?
Yes.
Exhibit I?
Yes.
And you can identify that? What is Exhibit I?
This is a letter from Mayor Muir.
And it's dated December 14th, 2020 for the record, is that right?
Yes, it is.
And is it true that in that letter, does it state that, Dear Mr. Kelsey, as mayor of the village of Addyston, I have reason to believe that you, as a duly appointed police officer of the village, have been guilty of acts of misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance in the performance of your duties, or you lack the ability to perform the duties of the police officer of the village of Addyston. Have you been guilty of acts of misfeasance?
No.
Do you know what misfeasance is?
I can't recall it right now.
Are you guilty of any acts of malfeasance?
No, sir.
How about nonfeasance?
No.
And does she go on to state that I am enclosing a copy of the charges I will be filing with the village council. I'm upholding the charges asserted by Lieutenant McWhorter that you do not have the ability to perform the duties of a police officer of the village of Addiston.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that if Addiston had appealed or sent information to Leeds, you would be able to perform your duties as a police officer?
Objection.
I believe I would.
You haven't had the opportunity to find that out, though, have you?
I have not been given that opportunity now.
Now, you were asked to resign, is that right?
I was.
And you denied that
I did.
request, is that right? Why did you deny that?
I denied the request to resign because, well, I've been a law enforcement officer for 22 years, basically. And because of a false allegation that wasn't investigated properly initially, led to criminal charges, which were dismissed through the judicial system. And then finding out about this leads deny later, the part or the simple act of filing a written letter of appeal to Leeds in order to allow them to move forward in reviewing my case more thoroughly to determine if they're going to allow me back in. To me, it just seems like it's not a heavy price to, or a big thing for me to ask.
As a police officer, Officer Kelsey, do you believe in the edict that all people are innocent until proven guilty?
I do.
Were you even questioned by the Butler County Sheriffs involving the incident on January 13th, 2020?
No, I was not.
Did they even take a statement of yours in their investigation?
No.
It's just a continuing objection.
But Chief McWhorter did, correct?
Yes, he did.
And Chief McWhorter found he didn't violate any policies or procedures.
Correct.
Correct? And he found that the testimony, he found that the charges against you were wrong.
Yes,
Are you asking the village of Addyston to reconsider your, the charges against you and reconsider the termination?
I am, yes.
And are you asking the village of Addyston to reinstate you or to re-access you as a police officer and to appeal to Leeds,
Yes,
the Leeds denial?
yes, to appeal the Leeds denial.
This is Councilmember Stafford again.
Yes.
Have you also asked the Glendale Department to do the same thing?
That would object to the relevancy. We're here dealing with the termination from the village of Addyston. What
Was
Glendale
he
does
not
is.
terminated from Glendale also, and doesn't it say that
First-
any,
Councilmember, there's no evidence.
Hold on a second.
Councilmember,
She can speak up.
okay,
If she wants to
there's
speak
nothing
up.
been presented in this testimony today about Glendale. I think we're going outside of our purview and doing some outside investigation is not relevant to Officer Kelsey.
Well, if we're going outside,
Excuse
hold on a
me,
second,
very
hold it
relevant.
1 second. If we're going outside the purview, the only thing that he's here for is because of that December Leeds deny letter. It's not a matter, this isn't an issue whether he held the gun to the woman's head up in Butler County. That's all been resolved.
Which
It
led to
doesn't
the
have
Leeds
anything to do with Clark County down in Tennessee. That's another situation. This comes down to one issue and one issue only. Can Officer Kelsey discharge his duties as an Addyston police officer under the policies and procedures without Leeds access at the present time? That's all it is. If you want to appeal it up at Leeds, appeal it. Appeal it. Do whatever you want to do.
Understood.
And if
I'm
he's-
not
if
here
he's
to discuss
reinstated-
that. I'm just, we're terminating a good police officer from a job because nobody wants to stick their neck out and file an appeal.
I don't
That's
think-
why we're here. And
I don't
whether or
think
not,
I don't think it's a matter of
Glendale-
not sticking the neck out.
whether or
I
not
think the
Glendale,
issue is, if his Leeds violation had occurred when he was a police officer in the discharge of his duties as an Addyston police officer, there would have been an appeal. This doesn't have anything to do with the village of Addyston. This has to do with his personal conduct, who he cavorts with or doesn't cavort with,
that's not why
and
he's
his
being
contact
terminated.
with law enforcement. That's what led Leeds
That's not
to
why
do
he's
what they
being
did.
terminated. He's not being terminated for those matters.
He's being
And if we're
terminated.
bringing up Glendale, since we're going outside of the purview of what we're supposed to be doing as council
we've been
members
doing
in
that all night,
Addison,
haven't we?
they terminated him in April before his case was disposed. You didn't. You did an internal investigation. Your internal investigation found he didn't violate any policies or procedures. That's what you did. Glendale didn't.
No, I
Two
did not.
separate matters.
That's what the
If
Addiston,
it was brought to my attention before now, it would have been taken care of, trust me on that. And I'm an elected official, so yes, I can say what I'd like to say.
Well, I mean, I think that you ought to be doing what's right for
I
Addison,
feel
not
like-
following Glendale.
I feel like you're trying to blame all of this on the village when we didn't have anything to do with it.
No.
Leeds is the one that made that decision. And if we decided that we don't want to appeal it, that's our decision. He can appeal it himself, can he not?
And Officer Kelsey has a right to object and to disagree with your decision. Does he not?
Sure he does, but I have a right to say the things I want to say too.
And you
I
have.
believe that we did nothing wrong in terminating him because he could not do his duties as an officer. If he cannot get into that, it's not even worth putting in a police vehicle to run the streets around here because he cannot get into the system to see what's going on.
The testimony was he could not get into Leeds. He testified he could get into NCIC and he could get into RCIC. And there's been nothing presented to the contrary. So whether or not he can or can't get into it without leads, that's a question you all need to figure out. He was given a leads denied. He was not given an RCIC denied. He was not given an NCIC denied. He testified all the same information to complete those forms are contained in either one of those reporting agencies' databases. So I disagree respectfully, Councilwoman, that that's the case. But you've already made your decision, so my job is here to let Officer Kelsey disagree and explain why he disagrees. Because that is his right as an employee of the Village of Addison. Now, I have no further questions of Officer Kelsey.
I just have one question. To access RCIC or NCIC, does that have to come through a dedicated leads terminal? Or can they be accessed directly, NCIC or RCIC?
Uncertain.
Does
What
anybody
is
know?
his answer?
I am uncertain.
He said uncertain. I don't know. I thought since it was a leads computer and it was put in and leads had the overall control of who accessed.
If you want to testify, walk up and testify and stand right next to him.
Well, then Bob called me up there.
Okay,
Relax,
I'm
buddy.
gonna call Mike Webb. Can you come up?
Call him.
Sure.
I don't think it's your turn to call him yet.
You're right. It's
Well,
not. Sit down.
you fooled us, Bob.
Please,
I have no further questions for
Call.
Officer Kelsey.
Lieutenant McWhorter. Oh, I just have one question, just a couple questions for you. As far as these allegations that were made against you by these, in Clark County and in Butler County on those two charges, you got them both expunged, correct?
You're referring to Davidson County, Tennessee, that was expunged. It was dismissed, expunged, and the one in Butler County, Ohio was dismissed and expunged.
Is there a Clark County too?
Clark County was in reference to the CAD report where I made the call on behalf of being concerned for Rebecca, and the deputy called me with the disposition of she was just inebriated.
Okay, but the one in Tennessee and the one up in Butler County, after you lost your job in Glendale, did you file any type of suit against the woman up there in Butler County that her charges were false or false arrest against any of the officers involved?
Not yet.
Oh, okay, okay. I have nothing further. We'll call Lieutenant McWhorter. Dave, want to take a restroom break?
Oh, sure, thank you.
Is everybody ready?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You've been sworn in, Chief?
Yes.
Okay. Chief, would you state your name for the record, please?
Donald McWhorter?
And you're the interim chief for the Village of Addyston, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain to council how you can access RCIC without going through the Leeds computer?
You can access RCIC, but it is attached to leads. Everything that comes back in criminal records, that will be outside of Hamilton County, driving records, AWOL records, felony warrants from other counties will all come through leads to RCIC.
Okay? And when you're on Leeds deny, are you able to access any information from Leeds?
Nothing from leads.
Okay? And how do you access NCIC?
NCIC comes to us through leads, I believe. Leads
Okay.
has the agreement with NCIC.
What does OLEG come through?
OLEG is ran through the Ohio Attorney General's office. That right there does have leads information in it. You have to input some leads into that, which would be social security numbers, date of births. You can also access criminal history through that.
Can an officer for the Village of Addyston discharge the duties that are in the policies and procedure manual of the Addyston Police Department without being lead involved?
No, sir.
Now, in terms of Officer Kelsey, in your investigation in that matter, did you investigate it?
Yes, I did.
Okay? Were any of the witnesses cooperative?
No, they were not.
Okay. Was Officer Kelsey cooperative?
Very.
Did you read the complaint from Butler County?
Yeah, I read the report. I never had the actual complaint. I had
Okay,
the report
and-
provided.
And after you conducted your investigation as far as that issue up in Butler County involving Mr. Kelsey and some woman, you made a determination to reinstate him, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay? When you received the leads denied for Officer Kelsey, what did you do?
I immediately contacted Officer Kelsey, advised when we had a problem that he was on leads denied.
Okay, and what was Mr. Kelsey's response?
He had no knowledge of the leads denied.
Okay, can you tell me one provision in the Ohio Revised Code that requires you to appeal a leads denied?
No, I cannot.
Okay, in terms of the leads denied, you never appealed that decision, is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you pursue what the avenues were available to the Village of Addyston to appeal the leads denied?
I would have to write a letter of appeal on, I believe it's section, I think it's the 512. I don't have the sheet in front of me. In that appeal, I'd have to ask them to consider what had happened and see if they would grant the appeal.
Has there ever been anyone denied leads access with the Addyston Police Department?
Not to my knowledge, the only thing we have had is we had an officer that was denied OLEG access because he had abused it about 10 years ago.
Okay? And let me ask you this question. Were any of the issues related to Officer Kelsey's leave denied related to the discharge of his duties as an Addyston police officer?
Or what you said was a leave denied issue because something he did on duty?
Yes.
No, they were not.
No, nothing further.
Just a few follow-up questions, if I may. Chief McWhorter, you testified that RCIC and NCIC is linked to leads, is that right?
Yes.
Is it also true that you can access both NCIC and RCIC through Channel 3?
When you are on leads deny, anything that comes through with NCIC being ran through leads with them having the terminal agreement with them, not us, the terminal operator on Channel 3 cannot disclose any of that information to anybody that is on a leads deny because this came through leads from NCIC.
And is that in the letter you received from leads, or where did that come to you from?
That is from lead security when I talked to them on the phone.
But RCIC, that's a separate database, is that right?
That's a Regional Crime Information Center, yes.
And that's out of Hamilton County, is that right?
Yes, operated by the city of Cincinnati.
And NCIC is also a separate database, correct?
Yes, that's the National Crime Information Center.
All right. You get your access to those through leads, but you could also get it through Channel 3, is that right?
You can get access through Channel 3, but they still run it through the same database, which goes through RCIC out to leads.
Is it true that if you're unable to get information through leads, really, but you can get it through RCIC and NCIC, really all you're missing out on is BMV records, is that right?
You cannot get any history of warrants that will be entered into leads you would not be able to get.
Warrants would not be in RCIC or NCIC?
The only thing that RCIC handles is inside of Hamilton County only.
Okay, but Addyston is inside of Hamilton County, correct?
Yes.
So if there was a warrant inside of Hamilton County or in Addyston, it would be in RCIC, is that right?
Yes, it would.
And you did do the investigation for the Village of Addyston, is that right? The internal investigation?
Yes, sir.
And you are familiar with your findings, is that right?
Yes.
And do you stand by that investigation?
Yes, I do.
And do you stand by that finding?
Yes, I do.
And do you feel, how was Officer Kelsey as a police officer under your leadership?
Never had a problem with it.
Did you ever have any complaints by any of the citizens of the village?
Not that I'm aware of, but officer complaints did not come through me at that time. They went through the former chief.
Was he ever disciplined to the best of your knowledge?
Not that I know.
And outside of leads tonight, would he be welcome back as a police officer at the Village of Addyston by you?
I would not have a problem with him being here if he could access leads and do his duties.
Nothing further, thank you.
We'll move our exhibits in and we'll rest.
I will call Mike Webb. Well, I do have one question about, did you want to put one in? I don't remember one at the time.
It's actually the law, but.
I mean, it's fine, I don't have any
Right.
objection, but I didn't know if it was, you were intending to do it. Can you please state your?
Hold on.
Oh, wait, you need to.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear testimony about the answer the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Michael Webb?
And Mr. Webb, are you employed?
Yes. I'm a full-time police officer for the village of Elmwood and a part-time police officer for the village of Glendale. And then I also work for the U.S. Marshal's office down in Cincinnati.
Okay. How long have you been in law enforcement?
Since 2003.
And have you been employed for those 18 years continuously?
I have.
Have you been in good standing throughout that period of time?
Yes.
Mr. Webb, have you worked at the village of Addyston?
Twice, yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the policies and procedures of the village of Addyston?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with leads?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with RCIC
Yes, sir.
and NCIC?
Yes, sir.
Have you used those databases in your 18 years as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever been on leads?
No.
Do you know anyone who has worked at the village of Addyston, to the best of your knowledge, other than Officer Kelsey, who has been on leads tonight?
I do not.
Leads it's true that Leads is the primary database for getting information in the course of your duties on patrol in law enforcement, is that right?
That's correct.
Are there other ways to get information through databases that are not in Leads?
There's multiple ways.
Well, what multiple ways?
Well, I mean, I know as far as like the village of Addison as a police officer, most calls that involve an arrest or, well, any call that involves an arrest for the most part, you are going to have a backup agency, whether it be the sheriff's office, Delhi, when Cleves was around, them predominantly. You know, you have other officers, you can get information through that.
Can you get information through Channel 3?
You can get information through Channel 3, yes.
And can you get information such as a distinguishing tattoo,
Absolutely.
social security numbers,
Yes,
dates of birth?
yeah, Channel 3 provides all information on anyone has basically a driver's license or through any state or, but that's predominantly through Leeds, but any kind of contact in Hamilton County, everything's done through RCIC or a control number.
Is it only accessible through Leeds, or is it accessible outside of Leeds? You said primarily, is that the only way you can get to it?
So Leeds kind of has a hold on the system, if you will, I guess. But if you could have access through RCIC and NCIC only, or through OLEG, it's not going to give you B&B records as far as like whether somebody's suspended or their driving status, but I mean, those are minor misdemeanor things anyway.
But you would be able to get arrest warrants for individuals within Hamilton County, is that right?
Yeah, so when you run somebody on your terminal, so the same warrant that would pop up in Leeds is gonna pop up through NCIC. Now, I'm talking as far as the terminal. Now, whether or not you have access to the terminal because it's through Leeds is irrelevant, because you're still gonna get that through NCIC, and they can give you NCIC or RCIC information.
Are you familiar with a 527?
Very.
What is a 527?
It's basically an arrest form just to get someone into the Hamilton County Justice Center.
And
It's a booking sheet.
could you get information to fully complete a 527 from RCIC?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if I make an arrest on US 50 for a drug offense, person provides their identification, you take the information off their identification, you transfer that over to the 527 form, transport them down to the jail. They can be fingerprinted at the jail. You can have fingerprint information back immediately, so if it turns out they're lying, then you're gonna know that. That has nothing to do with leads.
So you could properly book an individual that you arrested without accessing leads even one time, correct?
All day long, yeah.
Are you familiar with a field interrogation report contract?
Talking about a fur card?
A fur card.
Okay. Yeah, we don't use that much anymore, but yeah.
Okay, can you get the information you need for a fur card from RCIC? To the best of your knowledge?
Well, I mean, so back in the old days, and I mean like 90s, fur cards were, I mean, that's what it is. Fur cards were basically, this is before there were computers and all the radios and that kind of stuff. An agency would have contact with an individual for whatever the reason may be, and that's nothing more than a contact sheet that would be filed in a box and stuck in the PD somewhere alphabetically. And then 2 weeks from now, if there was some sort of break-in or something like that, you could go back and say, you could reference that fur card. But now, with the way the world is, basically, once you get a driver's license, everybody's got a fur card.
Yeah, so you really, the the fur card is basically obsolete in policing today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's probably stuck in there and just nobody's ever thought to remove it.
So in essence, any official report, you could get primarily the information you need to fully complete such a report from RCIC is within Hamilton County, is that right?
From RCIC?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Or from OLEG, is that right?
As far as I'm not complete, I don't know for a fact how OLEG ties into leads. I know you can access leads through OLEG. But OLEG, you can do reports on, you can get photos for photo lineups.
And you can access OLEG completely independent of leads, is that right?
Yeah, because there's training in OLEG, you can do, watch videos for training seminars, things like that. There's updated training from the state that they ask you to complete. OLEG's not just a report, just a information gathering source, it has multiple functions.
In your 18 years of being a police officer, a patrol officer, do you believe that you can maintain, if you could maintain the duties of police officer without access only to leads?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing further.
Officer Webb, are you familiar with policies and procedures of the village of Addyston?
You have specifically, generally, sure, yeah.
In regard to AWOLs, how do you determine if someone's AWOL?
Ask your partner.
Please?
Ask your partner.
Your partner,
Ask another police officer.
oh, yes, and so they would run it for you if you were on leads denied, correct?
Well, I mean, what you could do is if you're out with an individual and there's some sort of circumstance that most cases calls now call for more than one officer. So, yeah, give that to them for the time being,
So they would run it through leads.
and then they could do what they needed to do, sure.
Or if it happens down in Addyston, they run it through leads and then tell you if you're on leads denied, listen, this guy's AWOL.
Now, I know what you're trying to get at, and, no.
Oh, I'm
so what
just
they could-
asking you. I'm just asking you.
So what they could do, okay, so you get a sheriff's deputy comes up, you can hand him the driver's license, say, this is what I got going on, he could run them, yay or nay, there you go.
Okay.
If it's a yay, you already got the driver's license information, put it on the 527, take him down to jail.
And you were talking about this 527. I was looking at 527, and it says, one of the items are capias numbers. Where do you get the capiases? Say, for instance, if somebody has a felony warrant out of Kentucky, how do you get that?
Well, I mean, me, not being on that deny, I would get it off the computer terminal. Kevin,
Of what computer terminal?
the
Leads?
Leeds computer terminal, the Leeds RCIC and CIC
I have
terminal.
nothing further.
I wasn't finished with my answer. What Kevin could do though is take it down to the jail and have the individual fingerprinted. Once the warrants pop up at the jail roster, then they can give you the warrant numbers from Central Warrants Downtown, which is not a Leeds agency. And then you just add the warrant numbers to the jail roster.
Like I said, I have no further questions.
No further questions either, and I would, I will rest and enter exhibits A, C, D, E, G, H, and I into the record.
I have no objection. You want closing, Dave?
I don't need to close it.
Nor do I. So then at this point, presentation of evidence will be closed. Council can go into executive session at this point in time to discuss it. And then when they make their decision, they have to come back out of executive session and discuss that on the record. And I won't be in the executive session because I argued the case. But they have all the information. The court reporter won't be here for the executive session.
Nothing is kept written.
It'll be,
Just mayor and council.
it'll be mayor, council. Yeah. In other words, at this point in time. Second.
I would object, the mayor, is the mayor supposed to be in an executive session?
Yes.
When she makes an initial determination, she's already presented it?
Doesn't make a decision.
She doesn't make a decision.
But she
just
made a
makes a
determination
recommendation.
and was presenting it to council, I don't know if,
She has no vote unless it's a tie.
When we come back out, if there's any discussion, if it goes to a vote.
So if it's 3-3, she's the tiebreaker. And I'm not going in, staying in for the executive session. So anybody that's not on council or the mayor, you'll have to keep the notes. Other than that, everybody, including court reporter, would have to leave.
And you have to shut down the camera.
you could just call us with whatever the finding is, right?
Well, I'm gonna wait, see what they wanna do.
Okay.
I made the motion and Dan Pillow seconded it.
All right, so to go into executive session, Lisa Stafford made the motion, Dan Pillow seconded. Call for vote.
Dan Pillow.
Yeah.
You need to specify why we're going into it, a pending litigation, possible litigation, personnel issue. I mean, you have to tell us why.
And I make a motion that we're going into executive session over the personnel issue that we've been going through.
And pending litigation.
Very good. Okay, now I'll call for the vote. Dan Pillow,
Yay.
Lisa Stafford,
Yay.
Dan Dalton,
Yay.
Ann Pillow. Ann Pillow,
Yay.
Steve Dalton,
Yay.
Pam Jackson. Gotta wait until the building's cleaned. I mean, the
Clear.
clear. How about it?
Okay,
Okay.
so are you ready? Are you ready? Well, is everybody ready?
Ready?
All right, council's back in regular session. Council, how'd you like to proceed?
Somebody,
It's up to council.
Given-
Somebody's gotta say something.
I'd like to make a motion that we uphold the decision of both the police chief and the mayor, and that the village is not authorized to send a letter of appeal, and that the village is under no obligation to do so.
second.
Seconded it.
Motion by Steve Dalton, seconded by Dan Dalton. Any discussion? No discussion, we'll vote.
Dan Pillow,
Yay.
Lisa Stafford,
Yay.
Dan Dalton,
Yay.
Ann Pillow,
Yay.
Steve Dalton,
Yay.
Pam Jackson.
Yay.
That's it.
Move to adjourn?
I'll second it. Motion by Dan Dalton to adjourn, second by Pam Jackson. Call for vote.
Dan Phillip,
Yay.
Lisa Stafford,
Yay.
Dan Dalton,
Yay.
Ann Pillow,
Yay.
Steve Dalton,
Yay.
Pam Jackson.
Yay.
Good evening.